Before I begin the homily, I would like to thank Sister Carol Perry for being with us for, I think, the 19th year. She's just retired after 37 years in her church in New York, teaching Sunday school and many other teachings, and we're so happy to have her with us. So, and we hope she's coming back. I think she will. But she told us a story, not a story, she told us an event, and I think it's in a parish church where she celebrates the Eucharist, that the priest, for his homily, just turned around to the people and said, "Leave here and look like you're saved." Is that right? Well, don't get your hopes up. Looking back at the past, I think many of us, some of us at least, can remember the Corpus Christi celebrations in our parishes where we used to carry the Blessed Sacrament through the streets of the town or the village or the parish, and it was a great celebration. And it came into being in the Middle Ages because some people rose up and denied the whole idea of the Blessed Sacrament. And that's where that started. But I think today's first reading puts those processions of yesteryear in the proper context. Because the procession is like a mini exodus, a mini journey out of Egypt, which we're all on. It started on the day of our conception, and it will never be over, but there will be a final coming into the promised land, which is the presence of God. So we're all on a journey, and those old processions reminded us of that. What are we seeking on this journey? Like the Jews, the Israelites, they were seeking land of their own, the promised land. I think we can safely say that we are seeking life to its fullest, exactly what Jesus promised us. I will give you life and life in abundance, unendingly. That's what we're seeking. Isn't it Irenaeus, the great saint and martyr, who said, "The glory of God is a human being who is fully alive." And most of us are running about 35 or 40% of living, right? We're not fully alive yet. Well, how do we make this journey? Just like the Israelites of old, to make the journey, you've got to leave things behind. They couldn't take all those wonderful things they had in Egypt with them on the journey. That's why they began to complain after a while. "I'd rather go back to garlics and leeks and give up this hard journey," they said. And our journey through life can be very difficult and very foreboding and frightening. And it's a long journey. For some of us, it's well past 40 years we've been on the road. So how do we keep going? The answer, of course, is the manna. Not the manna that rained down daily on the Israelites, but the manna which we call the Eucharist, the bread of life. Now, if you say to most Catholics and ask an explanation of the Eucharist, they'll say, the bread is Jesus, right? But that's not what Jesus said. First, he said, "I am the bread of life." He didn't say the bread is me. He said, "I am the bread of life." In other words, I am the one which is the new manna, which will sustain you as you journey through life and come to your final destination. Our union with God through Jesus is closer than the union that happens when we consume food. What happens when we consume food? We take the food and it becomes part of us. Sometimes it becomes too much a part of us. But it becomes us. But when we consume the bread of life, not only in the celebration of the Eucharist, but in listening to the Word who is the bread of life, and living as the Word calls us to live, who is the bread of life, then we become Jesus. we enter more fully into the life of Christ. A difference from normal bread and food. We become the one we consume. And of course, that's Jesus' plan, because he wants to stay in this world until his second coming. And his presence is primarily us. You can't have the Mass. You can't have the Eucharist unless you have the body of Christ, which is the church, first. And it's only from the community of the body of Christ, which we call church, that we can have the sacrament of the Eucharist to sustain us. Jesus promises us on this journey not merely his presence, not merely his strength to keep going, but he promises us union with him forever. That's the bottom line of the Eucharist. Eternal union with God. So, to paraphrase Sister Carol's preacher, I will say, go out from here and look like you're nourished, well nourished.